Hello, good morning dear friends. I welcome you all in my video lecture on understanding Anandvardhana's Dhvani Theory. I am Lieutenant Keshav Pawar, Assistant Professor of English in Rayat Shikshan Sanstha Chhtrpati Shivaji College, Satara in Maharashtra state. I have been teaching English language and literature and also military science to the students of UG and PG for last 12 years. Today in this module, we are going to study Anandvardhana's Dhvani Theory. Friends, as you know, in the history of Indian poetics and in the history of Indian literature, Dhvani theory has a prominent place because in the 9th century, Anandvardhana said that suggested sense is the soul of poetry or any intellectual discourse, and therefore most of the universities nowadays has prescribed this theory for the students of UG and PG, those who are studying for literature and aesthetic studies. Even for the students of English literature, Dhvani theory is included in the paper of criticism. So this module will be helpful to the students of UG and PG, especially English literature and criticism. For the better understanding of my presentation, I have divided this module in three parts. Part number 1 that deals with introduction, and in that we are going to study Anandvardhana's contribution to Indian poetics, especially rhetorics. Also, we are going to understand the contribution of Dhvani theory to the history of Indian poetics, and in part number 2, and that we are going to study in detail the concept of Dhvani theory and its interpretation. Especially, we are going to study threefold meanings said by Anandvardhana, that is Abhida, Lakshana and Venjana. At the same time, we will talk about three types of kavya, that is Uttam kavya, Madhyam kavya and Chitra kavya. And also let's discuss about the three varieties of Dhvani, that is Vastu Dhvani, Alankara Dhvani and Rasa Dhvani. And in the last concluding part, we will try to underline the importance of Dhvani in the history of Indian poetics and the contribution of Anandvardhana to the history of Indian poetics. Yes, friends, now let's turn to part 1, that is Anandvardhana's short biographical sketch. Friends, as you know, India is considered as a land of rishis, acharyas and gurus. In the same tradition, in 9th century, Anandvardhana has written very important treatises on literature, philosophy and criticism. He also wrote some important book on religion also. So he was born in the present state of Jammu Kashmir and has written books in Sanskrit and Pali. He has written books in Sanskrit and Prakrit language, and friends, as you know, India is considered as a land of rishis, gurus and acharyas. In the same tradition, Anandvardhana is considered as a great poet, critic and philosopher of 9th century. He has written important 5 books, especially on religion and philosophy, that is Arjun Charitra, Tattvaloka, Devi Shataka and Dhvanyaloka. Dhvanyaloka, this book is related with criticism, especially about poetics, and in this book Anandvardhana has proposed the theory of Dhvani. According to Anandvardhana, suggested sense is the soul of poetry, and before that the Rasa theory was there, and according to Rasa theory, author or artist must evoke emotion of the reader or audience. But Anandvardhana says that Dhvani, that suggested sense, should be created by artist or author in his work, and therefore he is known as the exponent of Dhvani school Dhvani school is also known as Navina school in the history of Indian poetics, and Dhvani theory is considered the milestone theory in the history of Indian poetics. Yes, now let's turn toward the concept of Dhvani. Friends, as you know, in our day-to-day communication, or either in intellectual discourses or in literature, poetry, drama, or any artistic performances, suggested sense is very important, because any author, any artist tries to convey something hidden beyond the obvious, and therefore he uses some figurative language, some symbolic language, especially in written communication. In poetry, poet uses different type of alankaras, figure of speech, and different type of poetic devices to convey the essential themes, the essence of emotion, and therefore, suggestion is the main soul of poetry, because in day-to-day communication, literal meaning is important, but in intellectual discourse, and especially for effective communication, one must use dhvani, that is suggestion, that is the symbolic language, because it feels or it looks quite effective. And therefore, in the most literary works and intellectual discourses, dhvani, that is implicit meaning, predominates the explicit, that is literal meaning. And therefore, dhvani is very important factor in literature. Such a view has been proposed by Anandvardhana in 9th century. Friends, according to Anandvardhana, Dhvani theory is mean and method to create or achieve or evoke rasa in the mind of reader or audience. And therefore, Dhvani theory is the first semantic theory in the history of Indian poetics, because before that nobody has tried to talk about the meanings of the words. And therefore Anandvardhana is an exponent of semantic theory in the history of Indian poetics. Friends, as you know, any literary composition is the verbal texture, because it is highly impossible to convey the messages, to express the feelings and emotions without words, especially in literature, in poetry and drama. The composer and dramatist tries to express or tries to give experience with the help of words. He evokes rasas. He tries to appeal to the emotions of readers and the listeners with the help of words. And therefore, Anandvardhana says that word has three meanings. As you know, in the Western criticism, in English criticism, I. Richards has said in his popular book on function of criticism, he said that the word has three meanings, that is sense, then tone, intention, and feelings. In the same way, in 21st century, Ferdinand de Sassure also spoke about signifier and signified. But before 10,000 years back, Anandvardhana spoke about threefold meanings of the word, that is abhida. Abhida means denotation, lakshana, that is indication, and venjana, that is suggestion. These are the threefold meanings. Means the words which we use in literature has three types of meaning, and Mostly in day-to-day communication we use denotative meanings because we have to give the superficial meaning, or we have to do the normal communication. But in literature, the poet, artist or dramatist use magnified or figurative language because he has to convey the message with you know effectivity, and therefore he uses different type of figure of speeches and poetic devices. At the same time, he has to convey something hidden meaning, and therefore he uses some suggestive words or some symbolic words, and with the help of that words he tries to give some philosophic meaning to his readers. And therefore Anandvardhana talks about threefold meanings of the word. This is the first concept. Later on he talks about how the word Dhvani is used for. The word Dhvani is used for, according to Anandvardhana, the word Dhvani is used for 5 purposes. Number 1, that is conventional symbol that articulates sound, and with the help of that sound symbols we signify something. For example, if we speak a dog, after listening the sound dog, just we get the experience or an idea or picture of an animal having 4 legs and long tail and sharp teeth and barking, and it's domestic animal like that. Such type of words. And then the conventional meaning, the second, third, that is the power of the word to convey the suggestive meaning, and the fourth, that is the suggestive meaning, the exact word that suggested is, and the fifth purpose of the word Dhvani is poetic work containing the suggestive element. So for these 5 purposes we use the word Dhvani. And later on Anandvardhana talks about 3 types of Dhvani. Dhvani, as you know, first of all let's discuss what exactly Dhvani means. Friends, Dhvani is nothing but the suggested meaning. Suggestion means, now let's talk about a simple sentence, that is, sun had set. When we listen the sentence sun has set, we get an idea that it is evening time and sun has gone to set, and after some time there will be darkness and there will be night. Such type of an idea will come before our eyes. But the same sentence is spoken in different context, then its interpretation or its suggestion comes different. For example, the sentence sun had set is spoken by farmer. It suggests that it is time to return home and it's time to stop the agriculture work. In the same way, the same sentence is spoken by a priest. It suggests that it's time to go to prayer. Means for priest it is time to go to prayer, means he has to be ready to go to prayer. He has to pluck flowers and to take the items for prayer and to go for puja in temple. Means sun has set has meaning for priest to go to temple, and sun has set, it has meaning to farmer to go to return to home after completing. Yes, if the same sentence is spoken by the newly married woman, then it means that it is time to return her husband to home, and therefore the words has different layers, or the sentence has different interpretations or different meanings. For example, as we have seen that the sun has set. It has four meanings for four people, and therefore the artist or poet or author must use such type of the figurative and suggestive words that may convey the theme and emotion and experience effectively in their communication and presentation. Yes. This is the second concept told by Anandvardhana in the Dhvanyaloka, that the word Dhvani, or there are three types of Dhvani, that is Vastu Dhvani, Alankara Dhvani and Rasa Dhvani. Yes. Now, the third important concept in the theory, that is three grades of poetry. Anandvardhana graded poetry in three varieties or in three categories. According to him, there are three varieties of poetry. That is number one, that is Uttama or Dhvani Kavya, means the supreme poetry. Second, that is Madhyam or Gunibhut Kavya, that is the medium type of poetry. And the last, that is Adam or our Kavya. It is also known as Chitra Kavya. It is a simple type of poetry in which there is no suggestion or there is no even alankaras, and therefore it is pictorial type of poetry. Just it describes the object or event very in normal way. So now let's try to understand what exactly the Uttam Kavya is. Uttam Kavya is nothing but, according to Anandvardhana, such a poem in that suggestive sense is conveyed with the help of suggested words or suggestion. Such poem is the Uttam Kavya or Dhvani Kavya. The second one, that is Gunibhut Kavya or Madhyam Kavya. Such poetry in which there is use of different type of poetic devices and figurative speeches, figurative language, that is known as Gunibhut Kavya. And the last the type of poetry, that is Chitra Kavya, or it is also known as Adam or our Kavya. In such type of poetry, there is no figurative language as well as there is no suggestion. It is mere description of an event or object in a simple words, and therefore these are the three types of poetry. But according to Anandvardhana, that the Uttam Kavya or Dhvani Kavya is the supreme Kavya, like Mahabharata and Ramayana. The Uttam Kavya or Dhvani Kavya are the important the type of poetry, and poets should create such type of Uttam Kavya with the help of their creative intuition and with the help of different type of use of figurative speeches in their composition. And for that it requires Pratibha. Pratibha means creativity or intuition or sensitivity. Such type of sensitivity should be there in the mind of poet. Then it is possible to create such type of Uttam Kavya. But at the same time, Anandvardhana says that even the reader and listener also must have such type of creativity, such type of pratibha. Then it is possible to understand or to perceive the suggested sense in particular text or particular poetic or artistic work. Yes. So in this way, Anandvardhana spoke about three things. Number one, that is threefold meanings, that is Abhida, Lakshana and Venjana. Second, that is three varieties of Dhvani, that is Vastu Dhvani, Alankara Dhvani, and Rasa Dhvani. And at last he spoke about three types of poetry, that is Uttam Kavya, Madhyam Kavya, and Chitra Kavya. Yes. And at last, let's talk about Anandvardhana's view about the process of creating Dhvani in particular artistic work. According to Anandvardhana in Dhvanyaloka, the very purpose of writing or composition is to create rasa, means to create aesthetic effect and to express the experiences and emotions and feelings with the help of artistic work. And for that, the artist use alankaras, that is the figurative language, figure of speeches, figural mode, and different type of poetic devices. And at the same time, he uses stylistic values, that is known as riti. Alankara and ritis are very important to create rasa, that is aesthetic effect in a particular text. At the same time, there are some gunas and doshas, means excellences and defects. And therefore, the writer having pratibha, or the artist having pratibha, uses alankaras and ritis and creates rasa, that is the aesthetic effect, and he tries to minimize the gunas and doshas. And therefore, one must minimize guna and dosha, and to increase or to use alankaras and ritis, and should create rasas, and then it's possible to create dhvani in their literary work. So up to now we have studied what is dhvani and how it is used in literature or in communication or in discourses, what exactly threefold meanings are, and then three types of kavya, and the three types of dhvani. Yes, friends, there is also a criticism on the view of Anandvardhana about dhvani. Most of the abhavvadi contemporary critic says that there is no any such type of existence of dhvani in literature, because rasa is very important and dhvani has no place. But his disciple, means Abhinav Gupta's disciple, Anandvardhana's disciple, that is Abhinav Gupta, supported the view of Anandvardhana and says that to evoke rasa, dhvani is important. And he said near about 35 varieties of dhvani, and we are not going to talk about that 35 varieties of dhvani, but he said that Vastu Dhvani and Alakar Dhvani merges in rasa, and rasa dhvani is important, or it is the soul of poetry. And in this way, the theory of dhvani is a prominent theory in the history of Indian aesthetics and Indian poetics. And poet or artist must create dhvani with the help of her pratibha. And now let's try to understand the application of dhvani to understand literature. For example, if we talk about the historical novel, means that is known as Bakar in Marathi. In 12th century to 17th century, there was fashion to write Bakars. And in Bhausaheb's Bakar, there is the description of Panipat War. In Panipat War, there was, very much, loss of Maratha Empire, and to write about what that the loss occurred there in the Panipat War, Bhau Sahib writes, two pearls missed and millions of bangles broken. What does it mean? It means that two important soldiers or two important knights were killed, and thousands of soldiers have been killed in the war. Means especially when we talk in Marathi, दोन मोती गळाले आणि लाखो बांगड्या फुटल्या. Means it doesn't use that दोन सेनापती मारले गेले आणि लाखाच्या वर सैनिक धारातीर्थी पडले. But here he writes that दोन मोती गळाल्या आणि लाखो बांगड्या फुटल्या. Means it increases the intensity of its communication and its the emotion behind that, and therefore such type of the language should be used in communication. Even in the drama of V.V. Shirvarkar's drama, that is Nata Samrat. It is a popular drama in the history of Marathi literature, V.V. Shirvarkar, and the name of that drama or the title of that drama is Nata Samrat. In that, Parvati says, what does he say? That I try to quote that line in actual Marathi. जेवणाचं ताट द्यावं परंतु बसायचा पाठ देऊ नये. What does it mean? One must give his eating plate to somebody, but not to give the sitting chair, because as you know, we must help somebody, but we must not sacrifice everything. We must not give everything we have. In the same way, it has the aesthetic value and aesthetic importance in the particular Marathi dialect or in Marathi context. In the same way, when we talk about the poem written by the national poet of America, that is Robert Frost, the last concluding line of the Stopping by Wood poem, that is, woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. Here, Frost is not talking about his physical journey from one place to another place, and it's not time of darkness, or there is no any sort of the thick forest and all this thing. He has to convey something beyond. He is talking about the journey of life. In the journey of life, there will be different type of the ups and downs, and there will be the problems, there will be the temptations, but we must not fear to the problems, and we must not run after the temptations, because after all we have to reach to our destination and we have to accomplish our promises. Means these 4 lines talks about the journey of life. So the symbolic meaning hidden in that word is the suggestion. Yes. In this way, now in this module we try to understand what exactly Dhvani is and how to understand the suggested sense in literature. Thank you very much.